He had the soup and sandwich special.
Yeah, you had to pay for the sandwich too.
What were freebie the other day?
I left before them, but I'm sure they're coming.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is now 2:30. We're going to start our DPW committee meeting. I'm glad to be joined by Councilor Piniagua, Councilor Nave, President Pro Tem Hogan, Councilor George Rouser, myself, Deputy Commissioner Ann Fordock, and our Chief, that's also the Commissioner of DPW is here as well, our Chief Operating Officer here as well. We're going to be discussing municipal sidewalks along with road recon and stuff like that, but I'll let you go ahead and get started with your presentation here.
Great, thank you very much, Councilor. As stated in our phone conversation a couple days ago, the key questions that we're looking to answer are to provide a bit of additional context to the legislative timeline and various legislative requests that the administration has put forward related to this program, and to answer a couple questions about carryover lists and operations and things of that nature. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into our presentation, and we can go ahead and get started. Just as a reminder, let's see here, as shared in our last special committee meeting in February about this program, the Municipal Sidewalk Program has been around since 2021. It's a planned maintenance program that annually enhances and expands the city's sidewalk network. There's a number of various data points and considerations that go into where improvements are made. And over time, as we've been successful in implementing these efforts to put new sidewalks into our communities, we've looked to expand beyond just the $4.5 million of municipal sidewalk program fees, utilizing the CHIPS reimbursable transportation projects funding opportunities through New York State. And we have Commissioner Cannizzaro and some others who can talk about how we look to work with both operating dollars and capital dollars between the program fees and the CHIPS program, and how we uncovered in getting prepared for this meeting some challenging or some budgeting issues that had been identified previous year by former Budget Director Rudd, and how things have looked to get corrected in that process going forward. Again, just this program has been very successful, and we've grown the number of sidewalks that we've completed in every year. We started with about 4 miles of sidewalks. We're now doing about 14 miles of sidewalks. Our goal is to build as many sidewalks as we can with program fees and CHIPS dollars. So again, not spending any additional funding beyond those two funding sources, but looking to make sure that our operating and capital dollars are working hand in hand to make this program happen. I'm going to turn it over to Mike or Jenna, who's going to describe sort of some of the challenges here. Or Mike, did you maybe want to start with some of the budgeting things, and then we can go to Jenna to talk about the timeline of what we've been looking for?
Yeah. Mike Cannizzaro, Commissioner of Finance. I just have a handout. I'm going to So just kind of want to illustrate the last couple of years of what happened in the adopted budget and then what happened in the capital improvement plan. This was a new program for us. We had never done this before, and I think there were some budget errors specifically in fiscal year 2024 that, as far as why you guys are saying, why are you going back for so much more money, really the capital spending was budgeted in the operating. So really what I want to highlight, and I think 4.5 million, that number rings a bell. Everyone knows that's what we were projecting this program to be, and kind of sustaining it at 4.5 million. So if you go down to that total expenditures line, you'll see in fiscal year 23, that was 4.5 million, and then fiscal year 24, that was 4.5 million. And that never should have been that high. Capital expenditures do not make it into the operating budget outside of the transfer for cash capital. So really that repair and replace for $3.7, $3.8 million in fiscal year 24, that was really capital spending that if you look down underneath the capital improvement plan in 2024, you'll see total CIP cost 4.6, 4.7 million. So I think a lot of the issues we're dealing with today as far as the overages, well, that's because we got approved for double the amount of money. We're not bonding for some of this. So I think going forward in fiscal year 25, you can see, okay, the total expenditures are only 1.358 million. That's because now that capital spending in fiscal year 25 is going to be happening, via the CIP. So that's our project spending. So just, had the 3 years of the adopted budget totals, which in fiscal year 23, I went back to the book today, reviewed it. The sidewalk fund was approved with a deficit of $2.6 million in fiscal year 23. So as far as sidewalk fund running out of money, well, it was originally budgeted to, didn't have enough money to sustain itself. So that's really the 2.6 million. You can see that coming through. And just some of the CIP amounts, 4.6 million in 24, 7.5 million in 25, and then another 7.5 million in fiscal year 26. That was designed to be a combination of funding. Some borrowed funds, but then the other really would be the CHIPS funding. That's why we're here today. We're talking about utilizing this CHIPS funding as that other funding source for sidewalks. And over on the right, you can kind of see, tried to, map the budget to the actuals. That's a kind of a difficult mapping, but tried to do the best that I could here so you can kind of see what have we brought in, through fiscal year 24, the program fee, so that's the sidewalk tax. So you can see that's right, that's aligned with the budget. Fiscal year 23, we were expecting $908,000 in the budget. Fiscal year 23 actuals was $901,000. Fiscal year 24, we were budgeting a $1.8 million fee. We came in at $1.83 million. So as far as that program fee, that is operating the way that we intended it to. This program was initially funded with ARPA. So in the actuals, you'll see that $4.5 million of ARPA. That was the initial kind of seed funding for the sidewalk fund. And then bond proceeds. We have gone out to bond for $7.5 million worth of work. The expenditures, really that's the 7.4 million, that repair and replace, that really, that was us, getting our feet with the sidewalk fund. Those expenses, as far as true capital, sidewalk replacement, those need to be happening on our capital fund, via a project spending. So you'll see the repair and replace will continue to go down, because really the only expense that should be hitting that line is snow plowing. You can't bond for snow plowing costs. Those are operating expenses. So, wanted to put up the actuals through fiscal year 24 for the revenue side. The total operating expenditures of 8.5, which again, those are probably higher than they should be because we have some capital expenses happening in there. And then the true capital expenses, so these are happening via our project accounts of 9.9 million through fiscal year 24. So again, leaving, a lack of fund balance of just about 3.8 million, which this, the funding request here kind of gets us back into the black. So that is history of the sidewalk program at a very high level via, the budget and the CIP over the last couple years. Is that any questions?
Commissioner, I'll make a joke. If that's the high level, you're very concerned what the in the weeds perspective is. But let me just back up for a second here about the way that the program was structured at the very initial beginning, right? So we identified the program fee would be eventually $4.5 million, but we wanted to phase in that fee. So we started at 20% of that fee, then the next year 40% of that fee, until I believe just this year is the first year that we'll be collecting the full 4.5 million, right? And so in that ramp-up year, my understanding is that the program was always intended to be supplemented with other funding sources like our reimbursable CHIPS program, right? So again, just wanted to reiterate in very strongly that all of the sidewalk work that we're doing, that we're talking about here today as part of this program, is either funded by the program fees or funded and reimbursed by our CHIPS program, right? So this is part of the reason why it is complicated and it is complex, and we just had Commissioner Canizaro come up to talk about some of the ways that the operating capital dollars have to support each other in order to provide that program, and that's part of the reason why some of our legislative requests dating back to November here have been a little bit complicated. It's part of the reason, right? Jenna, would you mind coming up to talk about just, Councilor Geathers, you had asked me a question about it seems like your legislative requests keep changing or the dollar values are different. Are you changing the program? What's going on here? And the reason why we're going to try to walk through this in just as clear language as possible, and the group of us spent this morning trying to take some very nuanced and complex legislative and financial language to explain why some of these things were different, but it's not different in the end result of still providing for the amount of sidewalk construction that's funded by our CHIPS program and our program fees. So Jenna, would you mind just walking through and trying to be as high level as possible on some of these requests that we've been making and try to explain why this has changed? Yes, Councilor.
So this is a policy decision you've made with the CHIPS funding vis-a-vis, because I was on the council when we first did the municipal sidewalk program, where there was a lot of talk on how to fund it. I was all on board about how to fund it. I understand that the fees, had to be ramped up. That was presented to the council a little later, and my understanding we would bond. But the CHIPS funding, when would he decide to go off on that path? Anybody remember? You remember that, Corey? He's coming along the turn now.
Afternoon, councilors. Corey Dunham, Chief Administrative Officer. I think it was when we realized that we had this capacity within CHIPS. Historically speaking, and I'm looking to Mike, historically speaking, CHIPS had always been, and this predates a lot of us here, but in previous administrations, CHIPS had always been road recon. That's what CHIPS was. It was road recon. As we started to dig more into the CHIPS process, wait a second, we can use CHIPS to purchase snowplows. We can use CHIPS to purchase paving. We can use CHIPS to do sidewalk work as long as it's in coordination with road recon. So I think, as we really dug into that CHIPS process, we saw that there's an opportunity here for us to supplement the funding that we collect through the fees by doing more work that would be reimbursed by the state, is eligible for reimbursement by the state.
So there's no limit to how much money we can ask on the
CHIPS? I mean, we get an allotment each year, so you obviously wouldn't go above that. But there's it's a great program for us. The CHIPS program, again, we've been able to purchase snowplows.
With all that, obviously, we could have used this money for something else besides sidewalks, correct? I mean,
there's a whole host of things that we use it for. Yes.
yeah.
So I
we
think
could.
this.
I mean, there's a limit as how much we can.
There is a limit, but this allows us to stretch our dollars even further by taking advantage of the program that New York State has made available to us through CHIPS.
So it is a policy decision that we're going to spend CHIPS money
to
on
do
sidewalks.
as many sidewalks as we are able to do. That's certainly a policy decision. Yes. Mm-hmm. We had 7.5.
So we've been using CHIPS on sidewalks for more than since before this just November timeline that we prepared here for. And again, the dollar value here is not changing the total amount of construction that we're looking to do. It's just asking for it in different ways. And if you remember, Patricia, I had made an analogy about buying eggs and buying 6 eggs now and 6 eggs later, and instead of asking for 12 eggs today, and you said let's talk about sidewalks instead of eggs.
Some
so
diners,
I'd love for
some
yes,
diners charge an extra 50 cents.
well, eggs got a lot more expensive since we started this process. That's right.
Analogies.
That's a good analogy, right? Jenna, would you mind just walking through again the various legislative changes or tweaks and adjustments that we've made in order to request the same amount of funding? But how we've changed in response to some of the clerk's requests and some of our corporation council's requests as well.
Jenna, could you just identify yourself to the councilors
Yes,
and what you do?
Yep, Jenna Vendetti, I'm the fiscal officer at DPW. So we started back in November when we realized that we had overspent with Ballard and we needed more money to pay them off. I think the mistake that was made was that we tried to amend the two ordinances that approved the municipal sidewalk program. And I think it made everyone think that we were going to up the fees. So that initial request didn't end up happening. Then we resubmitted it because budget had asked us to change the language so that everyone would understand that the money we would be spending would get reimbursed through CHIPS. Then I tried to submit the 25-26 municipal sidewalk program. It was too early. Joe Barry said we had to wait. We were in need of money to get our contract going for the next coming year because they would want to start working like right now. And we have to have the money in an account for them to sign off on the new contract. I'm sorry, I'm really nervous. I hate talking up here. Then we tried to do it a different way, and in February, still not realizing that it looked like we were trying to change the program. So then we switched tactics and asked for it completely separately as just CHIPS money to do sidewalk work. So that's where we are now. Now there's two letters because we have to ask for the money separate from each other. We can't ask for the 24-25 and 25-26 money together, so we have to ask for it separately.
So Jenna, can I summarize
Sorry.
it? No, that was wonderful. That was wonderful. Thank
Okay.
you so much. Can I summarize it in, we're trying to do these three bullets here, right? We're trying to pay some of our contractors for work that was completed last year. We're trying to have money in line so that we can get started in this construction season as early as possible. And the thing that we tried to do that we were told that's too early in the year, you're not allowed to do this, you have to wait till the next fiscal year, the next tax year, is try to get those next program fees identified for this construction year, right? Trying to get as much sidewalks done as possible, right? So all of this legislative timeline, it could be distilled into three things, and three things that we're trying to do. Pay our contractors for some work from last fall, be ready as early as we can this spring, and get those program fees that are going to be available for this program in the July 1st, the beginning of the fiscal year, have those ready to go for construction.
So was that why we wanted to amend last year's budget? To take
Exactly.
care of
That's the reason why it's an amendment to last year's, because we're still in the 24-25 fiscal year. So we wanted to amend last year's legislation to allow us to do those first of those two things.
Was last year's, did you say that there was a double payment, so you had overage?
That's an even additional complicating factor that, we see that we were double, and I would need Commissioner Canizar to come back just to confirm this, but the way, again, that this program is funded with both capital and operating dollars, and so the operating dollars for the program fee side and the capital dollars for the CHIPS side, but then again, reimbursed by CHIPS, we have to sort of do some complicated things to make that work, make sure all of our paperwork is approved and ready to go. And so just to distill it all, our goal is to be as ready as we can for this spring so that we can build as many sidewalks as our contractors and our city employees are able to this spring.
I guess my question is, where did that additional money go?
Mike, would you be able to talk about that?
Sorry, can you ask your question again?
Yeah, you said it. I think it's 2024, there was a double payment.
Double budgeting in both,
Yeah.
how we double budgeted in the capital and operating, but we didn't, I'll let you respond to that, apologies.
How do we fall short?
So it's a great question. It's a product of the CIP amounts. For 24, CIP amounts were reflected in the operating budget and in the capital plan. In fiscal year 23, in the actuals, there should have been a bond proceeds for $4.5 million there. We did not do that. So really, it's that missed bond proceeds in fiscal year 24. And so if one of the other funds runs out of cash, like the general fund loans it cash, we can't do that with the sidewalks, at least for some of this capital spending. So the $500,000 transfer you guys just approved, that's the general fund giving the sidewalk fund $500,000. I would have to look into the detail a little bit more to get back to that as far as how did we contract out for more work than we were able to pay for. I think it was duplicating some of the project accounts, whereas those contracts were already residing on operating accounts. So I'll have to get back to you for that question.
Mike,
So is this,
come on, Counselor.
I mean, even from 2023, you have the ARPA at 1 million, but in actuality, it was 3 million. So it looks to be consistently over.
Well, also, I mean, for the adopted budget, like that unreserved, undesignated line, like that does not exist. Like this is an approved budget that, you know, looking at the fiscal year 23 budget, we have a negative fund balance of 2.6 million, which in 24, now we're saying, well, we're going to take 2.7 million from our fund balance to get to 4.5 million. Well, we're already in the negative 2.6.
Yeah.
How did we take another 2.7 out? So again, like this was not budgeted properly in the past, that I think we have rectified, and going forward, we have a better handle on the capital versus the operating dollars.
And so, Mike, just to build on that, you know, having gone through this process and identified what some of the challenges were, we've been able to say, okay, we need to keep those two swim lanes separate. Of, you know, the work that we're doing that will eventually be refundable by CHIPS has to be in certain budget accounts, and the work that we're doing that is paid for by the program fees has to be in a separate account. And so that's an additional you know, administrative task that we'll have to take on in order to expand the program. But having gone through these missteps, we've identified what those problems are, and we're able to go ahead and move forward with our program for this construction year.
The complete payment that we have for the 24 year, that will be coming from where? Would that be coming from CHIPS, or would that be coming from another account to take care of that bill and be done with it?
So for the two things that we're looking to do in the current fiscal year, one being pay some of the bills from overages from last year, will that work be refundable by CHIPS, or is that coming from program fees, or might it be a mixture of the two depending on? It's a mix. So that would be a mixture of the two depending on the specific segments that were done under that contract. But then going forward, we can keep those things separate as they should be.
What is the mileage that's currently done? How many miles of sidewalk are already done?
Neil, would you be able to respond to that?
Oh, is that on here? I thought it was gonna be 14 total. Oh, so it's 14.
Council, Neil Burke, DPW. Mileage totals are here. We've been moving at a good clip. We always try to do as much as we can, and you've seen that we've grown steadily. I don't know how much more we could keep growing, but we'll always try our best to be as effective as possible. You remember last year we had a lot of rain in the beginning of the season, beginning of summer. That slowed us down, so we had to really ramp up in the second half, and we were moving about as fast as we could. So that 14 miles, represents a lot of legwork on our side.
Is curbing gonna be completely different?
Yeah, curbing will be different from sidewalk stuff. Yep.
Have we ever had to go back and fix things that we've already done?
Once in a while.
For whatever reason, I mean.
Yeah, once in a while there might be something that needs to be adjusted. Maybe it's a sewer vent in the sidewalk, or it's an elevation at a driveway or something. We do our best to work with everyone, and once in a while we do have to go back and repair something, but it's fairly rare.
So that would probably be an extra cost that we're looking for, you know.
Depends. You know, if it was an oversight on our part, yes. But if it was, you know, the contractor had a bad pour of concrete and it cracked early and they need to replace it, that would be on them.
Okay.
Neil, while we have you up here, I know that Councilor Monto had asked about the carryover list and just the process for how we start our construction season, how we always start from the projects that we had planned to work on in the previous year, and for a multitude of factors, aren't always able to get to, and that those are the priority projects to begin the next construction year. Can you just give a little bit more color context as to some things that can prevent those projects from getting done in that year and then therefore be carried over?
Sure. So the sidewalk list, you know, we submit it each season. It's a work plan. We try to execute that as judiciously as possible. There's a lot of streets on it. We do our best to coordinate with other departments, but sometimes, inevitably, there are things that come up, like a main break or surprise work from a utility partner who didn't tell us until the last second. and we have to wait until everyone else is finished before we can go in and do the sidewalk. Sidewalk's really the icing on the cake when it comes to the street. We need everything else to be done first before we then come in and do the sidewalk.
So for the coming plan to work with the lead pipes that we're replacing, are we talking?
Absolutely. We've been talking for a couple of years. We are anxious for them to really ramp up their side of things because it will help inform where we're going to go behind them to get the biggest bang for our buck. Because if they're already digging and disturbing the street, we'd love to come in right behind them, kind of blame them, and then not have to come back and bother folks again for a long time.
That's the plan.
So if we did 14, how many miles do you want to do this year?
We would like to do something similar if we could, but again, there's a number of factors at play,
I
specifically
think the
weather.
big thing is money. I mean, we don't want to get in the same situation we got in last fiscal year, correct?
Absolutely. And so we've had a number of meetings just even in the past week or two to finalize some of our capital construction plans related to some of those additional projects. It will be an ongoing effort this season and in the years to come to coordinate that lead service line work with our road recon work, with our sidewalk work, because again, that CHIPS process, you can't get reimbursed. Once you submit to get reimbursed for a specific road segment or block, and you get money back from the state for the CHIPS, you can't re-ask again on that same block for 10 years. So again, you always want to make sure that you've done that order of operations, that lead service line, that road recon, then that sidewalk, so you can say, we're not going to touch this again for 10 years. We can go ahead and request the work for CHIPS there. And so making sure that we've got a good plan for our CHIPS expenditures is something that the administration's been working on very closely over the past couple of weeks here.
So,
Come on, Counselor.
Corey mentioned that you get one allotment per year.
Correct.
So what's the difference with one allotment and reimbursement?
Mike Kinsar, Commissioner of Finance. Yeah, we get one allotment at the beginning of the New York State fiscal year, so that will be April 1st. The last few years, it's been about 15.8, 15.9 million. And then we claim quarterly. So it's not a calendar quarter specifically, it's like the month before. So we have to submit like mid-February, mid-May, mid-August, mid-November would be the claim dates where we have to submit by.
Or the streets identified by chips, or like this carryover list here, some streets have chips next to it, so how do you identify what streets are going to be using chips versus everything?
Neil, can you answer that question, please?
Gilbert, DPW. Connor outlined a really good backstory here for CHIPS, which is if we just do the sidewalk, we don't want to claim it on CHIPS because you only get one shot for a set amount of years to claim something on CHIPS. So we want to make sure that the street's in good condition. There's not other work that needs to be done first. So a lot of these streets may be unimproved streets, or they may be streets that have already seen work or have work planned for pavement rehabilitation. So there's a number of different factors, but that's why every street isn't just automatically available for CHIPS.
So you do the whole, for CHIPS, you do everything, right?
For CHIPS, we
that's
want to
what
make
you're
sure it's in
planning to
good.
do.
Yes, we want to make sure everything's in good shape before we come in and do the sidewalk. The sidewalk's the last piece, and then we'll submit for CHIPS.
I have a question about the debt service. Debt service, how it's gone up and away. Can you explain, Commissioner?
Yeah, so what was your specific question on debt service?
Yeah,
So we've issued, $7.5 million worth of bonds to date for the sidewalk fund. Usually those are, kind of a 10-year life. So really the $297,000 would just be the debt service for the $3 million bond, and then debt service for the $4.5 million bond will kind of start hitting this fiscal year.
is this an interest?
This would be principal and interest.
And what portion would the program fee?
The program
cover
fee is
that?
going to cover the entire, like the program fee, once we get to that final, raise amount, the fee is supposed to support a program of $4.5 million. what I think we've internally identified is over the last 2 years, we can do more than 4.5 million. How do we do more? We have to unlock CHIPS funding to do more than $4.5 million worth of work, because we're not going to raise the fee. So we can't have, plan on doing $6 million worth of work. So if we're going to do $6 million, obviously we need to get $1.5 million from CHIPS.
So correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe I was not understanding this correctly. CHIPS initially comes from road recon stuff, right?
New York State funding,
And
yeah.
then we're able to allocate, to Corey's point, to use that money for other things.
For projects, like the
For projects.
DPW annex, that's going to be funded via CHIPS.
Okay. So
And they have to be transportation related. That's part of
yeah.
the requirements from the state on what you can submit for reimbursement.
Okay.
Right. And so as Corey was saying, in years past and prior administrations, we had only been using it for road recon. After learning that we can use it for a broader array of transportation-related projects, we've been able to take full advantage of the allotment that the state provides to us.
So in essence, we're making a policy decision that we want to do as many sidewalks as we possibly can, and we're funding them through CHIPS, in lieu of maybe using CHIPS for road recon. I mean, we're making a decision not to use money not to use that specific money we're using for sidewalks for road recon, correct?
I would reframe it slightly that it's more about making the best use of the available dollars that we have by leveraging the CHIPS program. And the timing of the CHIPS program and CHIPS reimbursements has to be after we've done that last investment in that block, and that we're not going to touch again for another 10 years.
CHIPS money in the state budget was settled the beginning of the year, correct?
We'll receive our new annual allotment at the beginning of the state's fiscal year, which is April 1st. So we should receive about $15 or $16 million going that will then be able to submit for reimbursement. So there is sort of a rolling period there.
I'm talking about everybody getting together, so April 1st to be when we could first get the first allocation, right?
That's when we'll automatically get our allocation from the state, and then we'll have that available to us to reimburse against over the course of multiple years.
See, I think the question I would have is why don't we just do what we have the money to do as far as the sidewalks go? Instead of bonding and incurring debt, why don't we just do it that way? I mean, we're going to have like.
I mean, the point of issuing bonds was just to leverage the funds. So, I mean, in reality, if we were just going to use the fee, we would have done $2.7 million worth of work so far, through fiscal year 24, without, bonding or looking at some of these other sources of funding.
Sorry, would have been 2.7 what?
2.7 million. That's how much, through fiscal year 24, that's how much sidewalk fee we've collected, which, the mileage would have been minuscule compared to what we've been able to do if we only had $2.7 million of funding over 3 years for the sidewalk program.
Is that going to pay for new or what we owe?
Say that again?
Is that going to pay for new or what we owe?
That's if we would have bonded.
Oh, that's bonded.
Right. So
Okay.
I think what Commissioner Canizaro was saying is that if we had only used the sidewalk program fees, we would have had less dollars available to build fewer sidewalks. So by able to unlock the reimbursement capacity of CHIPS, we've been able to build a significantly higher number of sidewalks than only those program fees would allow.
Maybe I inartfully said this, but I mean, we could use the fees to pay for the bond,
Pay
correct?
for the debt service, exactly.
I mean, that's what I meant.
That's the plan,
But,
yep.
and use the CHIPS for just road recon. We could do that, right? I mean, that could be a policy decision too, right?
I think so. I think we could look at how.
I mean, I love the sidewalks. I mean, there's no doubt about it. I love the excess and all that. But we get a lot of, obviously, coming out of the winter we had, we're going to get a lot of pressure to do more road work. Now, is there some sort of like, is it a capacity issue with either one or what? I mean, as far as getting people. I mean, the sidewalks are done by the same companies most of the time, Ross and I don't know who else does it.
Ballard does it.
Ballard does
Ballard.
it? Okay, Ross used to do it.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what I'm wondering.
Sure, absolutely. I think Corey might have an answer to your question.
Corey's having a little conversation, sidebar conversation with our city clerk.
I have to apologize. I had a large coffee today, and I'm pretty sure it wasn't decaf. So I will say road recon is still king when it comes to chips. Like that's the priority. That's where we spend the money. The reality is that we have found year over year that we're just not in a position to expend every single dollar that we get from the state. So we do have, some carryover, and, even if we continue to increase, there are other projects that are eligible for CHIPS reimbursement. So rather than let that funding, go unreimbursed, there are other things we could spend that funding on. So road recon is still the priority with CHIPS funding. It's just that we have found year over year there is still remaining funding that we could use for other projects. So, again, sidewalks, snow plows, that's, and the commissioner and first deputy commissioner can speak to this. That's largely how we've been able to improve our snowplow fleet is through Rich DeVesti and the work that he's done working closely with New York State on CHIPS. So, we are never sacrificing road reconstruction for anything else. It's road reconstruction remains king, and then as additional funding is available, we use it to meet other needs, and then we can easily get reimbursed by the state.
I didn't realize that we had an unlimited pot of money in the state like that.
It's not
unbelievable.
unlimited. It's not unlimited, and and as we've been using it for more things, we, are working to improve our process to make sure we're taking full advantage of all the funding. Again, this is a pretty significant shift from where we were a decade ago in terms of how we use CHIPS funding.
Is there a cap per initiative, or is it just a whole pot of money and then you just draw from it?
I'm sorry, Councilor.
Is there the CHIPS money? Is there a cap per initiative that you use it for, or it's just a whole pot of money that you draw from?
Yeah, there's no, you can only spend 50% on road recon, or you can only spend this much on sidewalks. It's really, as long as it's an eligible expense to reimburse, we can use it as long as it's consistent with the state funding. But again, I just want to make it clear, paving roads remains the priority. We just want to make sure we're using the funding that we're not able to spend in every fiscal year, taking full advantage of it.
So how much can we be reimbursed every year?
So the annual allocation is around $15 million.
15.8 through 15.9.
Closer to 16, that's right. Yep.
It's the ballpark.
And just focusing more on the sidewalks, is Ballard the only one you said? Ballard?
Ballard's our primary sidewalk
Okay.
vendor. We're looking to make sure that we have other vendors available to also support this work, because we are looking to do
How
it.
often are the vendors submitting for reimbursement? Is that adding to the unforeseen increase?
That wouldn't add, the reimbursement is slightly separate from the program expenditure. So after the work is done, the contractors, in coordination with the city, provide photographic evidence of, this work was done in this location, here's where it was, it meets ADA standards, things like that. The finance department and DPW take that information and put it in an application back to New York State to then say, we've done this work, here's proof that we've done this work according to the right standards, can you please reimburse us? So the reimbursement is a little bit of a different question there.
I don't know.
There's the budgeting question that Commissioner Cannizzaro talked about of how, why didn't we go to request bond funding in fiscal year 2023, and were things double counted between capital dollars and operating dollars? And then it is a related but slightly different question of how do we fund that? How do we pay for the work that was done? Yes. And that's the coordination and the back and forth between the program fees and the CHIPS funding. So your question on what happens to get reimbursed, or what does the contractor do, it relates to a part of paying for that infrastructure investment.
Rephrase it, I guess. I'm just asking, yeah. So basically, how do we get here is the overall topic. How do we get to, at the next fiscal year, basically, or next budget year, needing additional funding for 2 prior years?
So that's a confluence of a few things. It's the lack of bond proceeds in fiscal year 23, some double budgeting between operating and capital in the past couple of years, and just in the scramble to do as much work as possible towards the end of the year, doing more, misallocating those dollars and
Okay,
at
so
the end of the
then-
construction, you're saying, hey, we don't have the money that we thought we had. We need to request that bonding in order to pay the work that was done.
Okay, so then let me go back to your timeline, because this says November 2027, that was this when you first identified that there was some budgeting issues? Or like, when was it identified? And if so, why did we continue to increase the mileage if we were not already situated?
We were done by November.
Yeah, so in the last construction year, we were done, end of October, early November. As that work was completed and our contractors provided us the bills for that work, we go back into our various line items in our budget and say, oh, we made a mistake. It shouldn't have happened. We did more work than we had in the various pots of money that had been misbudgeted. We need to request an amendment to pay for that work. And that's that first legislative timeline. The other timelines are related to getting the program for the next fiscal year ready to go, the next construction year ready to go.
Okay, all right. I just want to know for the upcoming year, I guess you guys probably know what you're going to need to run the upcoming year. So is the council going to be looking for another bond authorization or project authorization for the sidewalks?
I think so. Jenna, can you just describe the most recent legislation that we have ready for the regular meeting on March 31st?
I know
Yep.
what's coming. I know
Okay.
the two companion letters for 2014. Yeah, I'm just talking about in the future, like, are we gonna find ourselves maybe like, down the line at the end of this year or at the
In
beginning of?
October, November.
Yeah, you guys coming back to us in this situation or like, should, yeah, I'm just saying, I know you guys did some forecasts,
Yep.
And you kind of got an idea of where we're going to be at. So can you kind of be a little bit transparent with the council and let them know what's coming in the upcoming year or so or whatever?
Absolutely.
Like it's going to
And-
be additional 4.5 or 5 million or 6 million.
Yeah.
That's in between budget season.
Just to respond to your last comment there, our goal is always to be transparent with the council on what we're working on and how we're paying for that money. And as
But you already spent the money.
in this example, we did because of a budgeting error in the past year.
I appreciate
Absolutely.
you telling us after.
I wish we had a time machine. We could go back to November 6th and say, hey, weren't supposed to do that work. As part of this process, we found an error and we've been working to fix it since November. But because of this, financial, what's the word when you investigate financial? This auditing work in terms of looking to make sure that everything's correct. We have identified past errors. We've resolved them, and that makes it so that we won't have to come back to the council in the future to say there was a mistake and we need to pay our contractors for the work that's been done.
That was going to be my next question. Just how do we prevent this from happening in the near future?
And I think our work has been, we've done that in order to prevent us from having that happen in the future.
Sir, do we have a current balance of chips at all or no?
We do have a current balance of chips. I think, as Corey mentioned, you are allowed to roll over past years. We have a number of projects that we're ready to submit, both from last construction season and that are identified to be completed in this current year. Things like some vehicle purchases, the completion of the annex, the big garage at the DPW. So at the current moment, there's about $25 million of chips in addition from past years, in addition to the future allotment. And part of that is because of the timing of the reimbursement process. That's why those things can get backed up at times. And we have a plan for how we're looking to allocate those chips dollars to reimburse those projects.
So out of the 25, is there any already allocations?
Absolutely, yes. We're looking for the annex and some vehicles purchased and some future planned work, and some work that was completed last construction season and work that will be done this year.
Do you know offhand what will be left from there?
We have identified a plan that has all of our carryovers from prior years, and then it's a question of the work that we're going to be doing this construction season and which segments we'd like to submit for CHIPS reimbursement based again on that complex coordination between various infrastructure investment programs like lead service line replacements, road recon, and sidewalks. So again, the decision on which project we reimburse for CHIPS is impacted by which of those multiple construction programs when they get done in the timing of the year and how they get layered on top. So it is a very challenging coordination process between a number of our operating departments to say, our plan is to do this, this, and this, and things can happen for a multitude of reasons, but then once that final icing on the cake of sidewalks gets done, then we know that we can resubmit for CHIPS.
So you would say your plan would be to do the lead service lines first, then do the road recon, and then do the sidewalks?
It's, in general, that's always the plan, and then various on the ground considerations impact the timing of those three investment programs. Yes.
When are you going to be putting sidewalks in areas that never had sidewalks?
Neil, can you talk about how we plan? What factors go into the expansion of our sidewalk network?
Yeah, like Kenwick Drive, for example.
So we put sidewalks into streets that haven't had them historically each season. The majority of the sidewalk work is to replace what already exists, but in each quadrant, there are areas that are expanded each year. Kenwick, I can't remember specifically, is that up off Grant?
Yeah, they don't have sidewalks.
Yeah,
Never
I
did.
think that might actually be on the work plan because it leads
They're
up
that?
towards the school. So if you look at, the work plan streets, you'll see a lot of them are around schools, whether it's they have a sidewalk or they don't. That's really where we focus a lot of the work first and then layer in a bunch of other stuff.
So the sidewalk is going to have nothing to do with schools, and it's something to do with parks. Am I correct? We're strictly going with residences. Am I right?
You're asking,
The sidewalk, this program
are we
is
doing
just,
school sidewalks or park sidewalks?
right,
That's
this
what
is
you're
out
asking.
of it. This is just strictly for residences. Now-
Yeah, we're not doing sidewalks for schools, but in school areas where we know kids are walking to school, that's one of our considerations. But we're not going to do them on the school property.
Right, that's on another topic.
Right.
And also, for residences who maybe have bought property, just installed sidewalk, are you going to go to those properties and say, well, we got to put, because this was the criticism I heard. They had just put a sidewalk in the last year or two, and now we're coming in, taking it down, putting a new one.
If it's in good shape and it's in the right spot, we don't want to tear it up, but there's a number of considerations we have to make when we repair the sidewalks as a whole. So we're no longer focusing on one property at a time, we're doing the whole block. So if we can keep it, we will, but there are oftentimes grades we have to make up, alignments, things for snow storage, room for trees. We do our best to coordinate, because if someone already did it, we'd like to keep it as much as we can.
Right, because you're taking consideration sidewalks in which there's a growth of trees and roots cutting into those.
Yeah, there's a lot of factors. I'm not saying that there hasn't been a sidewalk that was only 5 years old or whatever it was and we had to realign it. Things do happen, but we do our best to try and leave what's there to the extent possible.
Okay.
So if somebody wanted to do their own sidewalk, they can contract with whoever they want? Or
Yeah,
do
they can contract, they can call a permits office, we'll get them a permit, and, they do get reminded that, hey, if you want to wait, we can't tell you exactly when we'll be there unless we know it's on the work plan, then we'll call you up and tell you. But if you say you want to sell and you want the curb appeal, you're more than welcome to do it as long as you get a permit.
So residents who had been grandfathered in years ago with Tarvia, is that going to remain?
No. So you have to have a concrete sidewalk.
What I'm saying is for residents who had grandfathered in Tarvia, some do, are you eventually going to say, well, we're putting in new sidewalks in and we're going to take out the Tarvia? that
Yeah,
you've
it'll all
had
be concrete.
down the road? Okay.
Okay.
Only question, Michael, it's you. All right. Sorry about that. So, when you guys, we're sticking with DPW, okay, and we're sticking with sidewalk. So when you guys send in the legislation request that, that includes the bond request, do you all communicate with bond counsel before sending them to, you know, circulating them? Because like, that's one of the biggest problems with the six letters that I got. I think that if we would have communicated with bond counsel or maybe Catherine Conroy, who does the bonding law, she might have would have been able to tell you guys, like, we can't do this or we can't do that, and could have avoided a lot of this right here, you know?
Okay. Yeah, no, I think our goal is 2 separate letters going forward, one for bond authorization, one for
Yeah.
CHIPS, just to kind of help, you know, keep these funds separate. But other than that, yeah, I mean, I know that every, you know, letter is getting reviewed by Ted before it's getting on the agenda. So, yeah, I'm not sure if there's
So
other.
so what I'm saying is that you guys don't do that prior to sending them out. You guys send them out, and when I send them to law, that's when the bond counsel review them? Oh, okay, so not before.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. The other thing, like with the CIP form, can you make sure that, that the CHIP funding, it does
It's
say 100?
properly in the column that it's
Yeah,
supposed to
and
be.
it says
Okay.
100% for
Yep.
the percentage? Yep. that's it.
Cool. Know that form well. Thank you.
Councilors, just in closing, I just wanted to reiterate the timing of when these items are going to be up for vote, right? So the regular meeting is Monday, March 31st, and the study session is the Wednesday prior, the 26th or whatever that date is. Just communicating the urgency of getting this moving forward so that we have our bids and our contracts in place for this construction season. Our contractors, already have laborers and operators lined up. They're in the process of being trained. We don't want to enter into a situation where those workers don't have work to do and go elsewhere, and then we're stuck not being able to build sidewalks in our communities.
Absolutely. I think now that we have some more clarification with the 2 different accounts, with chips and everything like that, cash capital with allocations, and outside of the bonding stuff, we just want to just be sure that we know what's going where and what's doing what, so that way we don't have run into this confusion again. Also, with that coming up on our next agenda, could you also provide us with a timeline when you plan on taking care of last year's things and, just get us.
So last year's things will be taken care of as soon as we have the funding to pay for last year's things.
And also, the rollover list, do we know how many miles that is, or no? Just to get an estimated number, basically, on.
Not off the top of my head, but we'll get it to you. Absolutely.
Thank you, Neil.
Get that to us before the next meeting. That would be perfect.
We have already released another list for 2025 as well, and then this is a rollover, so.
So we always make sure that the carryovers are on that list. So these carryovers are on that
and then-
list
okay,
too.
okay.
Yep.
Okay,
So we definitely don't need the list with the legislation.
okay.
Can we get not to put too much work on anything, but for the carryover list of streets, could you put an asterisk or something to identify that it is a carryover on that completed list instead of doing 2 separate lists, or how do you want to?
Sure.
Okay.
I think, I think I'm the only counselor who was here pre-ARPA, and this will be, we're coming up on the budget season, and that money's gone away. And we're back to reality, so I imagine we'll have a lot of questions, especially of our finance people and our budget people.
Always a lot of questions in budget season, and there will be this year, absolutely. Great. Thank you very much, everyone.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can't think of a more. We got 3